What is going on, everybody? Hopefully everybody's having an awesome day. Listen, my name is Steven Cabrera. I'm so glad that you can join me. I have really cool things to talk about today. Before I do start, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button if you do like this content, and make sure you leave a comment below, and if you have any questions. I want to talk about cool lighting you saw in the beginning. I just want to give a cool shout out to Walmart, really. So I bought these lights at Walmart and kind of wanted to add a little effect in the background, and yeah, it comes with a nice little controller, and it has different speed options, different modes, and as you can see, I mean, it's pretty legit. Spent about 25 bucks. So that's it. All right, guys. So what I want to talk about is getting the best, having the best setting, or just the basic understanding on the different settings. So you got the 3 pillars in videography or photography and camera in general. So you bought yourself a camera. You bought the most expensive camera you could find. You've done all the research on YouTube. You get the camera, you set it up. First of all, you figure out that cameras are expensive, but then you realize that the lenses are even more expensive. So anyways, you buy a lens for it, or you have the kit lens, you set it up, and you start to shoot. When you go to edit it, you realize that your videos are not really that good. They're just complete basic videos. I could take better videos with my phone. So that has definitely happened to me. I bought my camera and I started shooting in it. I had no idea what I was doing. I set it in auto mode, and it was it's subpar quality whenever it comes out, right? And you quickly realize just because you have an expensive piece of equipment doesn't make you really good at what you're doing, right? You really have to understand the ins and outs, and just understand what you're doing to get some awesome quality. That's anything in life, right? So there's 3 main pillars in videography or photography that you really need to understand anytime you're dealing with a camera, right? You have your ISO, you have your shutter speed, and then you have your aperture. Now, those things are super important to get right. I know at first, when I first started, I was just overwhelmed, to be honest with you. Just didn't understand what I was doing. I was just, like I said, I grabbed my camera and started shooting, and that's what that was. But I really wanted to get better quality. I know I had a great camera, and I know I could push it beyond its limitations. But so I just decided to dig deep and started figuring out and started researching, and definitely getting more into just understanding the big 3. So let's go ahead and talk about ISO. All right, so ISO is pretty much how sensitive your camera is to the light, right? So you see ISO 100 and you see all these numbers. So the higher you go with your ISO, the brighter the image is going to be. So let me go ahead and show you. So right now I always have my ISO at 100. I never mess with that, and I'll explain more later. So as I start increasing my ISO, you start to realize that your picture gets really blown out and you can't even see anything. Let's go back to 100. So the higher you go, the brighter the image is going to be, and sometimes you're going to need to bump up your ISO, right? So let's say if you're in a setting where it's really dark and you just need something a little more to pop, something more light, so you're going to increase your ISO. Now for me, I keep my ISO at 100 all the time, and I mess with the aperture and the shutter speed to achieve that proper light. So it's all a light game, right? And you're just going to have, with all these 3 things, you're just going to have to find the proper balance. So ISO is pretty much the brightness and the brightness in the image, right? Okay, you guys got that? You following me now, right? All right, now let's talk about shutter speed. Now, shutter speed is the length of time the digital sensor is exposed to light. Now, that might seem kind of crazy, but it's pretty much you either, if you're taking a picture or a video, it's how much light is going in a measurement of seconds, right? So just to show you, I'm gonna go ahead and set my shutter speed, but now I'm gonna have to adjust my ISO, so just bear with me. All right, right now I have my shutter speed at 1/4 of a second. As you can see, it's very, very choppy, right? Now, if you're trying to achieve a slow motion slow motion blur, then that's what you want. You want it as low as possible. So I increased it a little bit more, right? You still see that blur as I wave my hand. You still see that movement, right? And then I'm going to increase it even more. Right now it's nice and crisp. You can see everything is, the movement is really sharp and really edgy. Now there's a couple things whenever you're dealing with your shutter speed, for photography at least, if you have, let's say if you're trying to take a photo of a dog that's moving, or maybe water that's dripping, or something that's moving very fast, and you want to get that still image, you want to make sure you have your shutter speed as high as possible to get that image. Now in videography, there's a rule of thumb, right? So let's say if you're shooting at 4K at 24 frames per second. Okay, the rule of thumb is you always want to double your shutter speed to your frame rate. So if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, you're gonna have your shutter speed at 1/50th. And that's just the standard for that nice cinematic look, that nice motion blur, that it doesn't look so choppy, or it doesn't look so just that sharp movement, right? It's nice and crisp. And it all depends on what you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to make your shot look. So that's pretty much shutter speed. All right guys, so let's go ahead and talk about aperture. Aperture is pretty much a space where light passes through, right? It's an aperture. So the aperture is measured in something called f-stops. Now, if you take a look at your camera, you're gonna see three different things, right? You're gonna see a number, it says 1 over another number. So for me, I have it 1/50th, and then you're gonna have something that says f1 point whatever. So for me, it says f1.4, and then you're gonna have your ISO and a specific number. Now the f is the way it's measured, right? The way the aperture is measured. So right now I have, the lower the number, the more open your aperture is. So right now I have it at 1.4, and that's the lowest it can go, and that's the most open that my camera lens can get. So it's allowing the most light in right now. Now the cool thing is, if you have a camera lens with a very low aperture, so like for me 1.4, it's very good for low light situations. So let's say if you're in a place where it's a dark room, you put the f-stop to as low as it gets, and it opens up that aperture, you're gonna allow more light in, and it's gonna be brighter. Now the cool thing about aperture is that you also achieve the depth of field. Now I like the blurry background, right? That bokeh, it looks really, really nice. So I have it on 1.4. Now if you see, as I get closer, it focuses more on my face and it gets blurry on the background. I like that. To me, it looks crisp. But now as I change my f-stop, right? As I start to reduce my aperture and it closes, so the higher the number gets, the aperture starts to close and it lets less light in, the depth of field is not gonna be as blurry anymore. Like I said before, this is a game of light, right? So your shutter speed, your aperture, and your ISO, it all needs to balance out to get the shot that you're looking for, right? So another thing too is, it's always better to shoot underexposed, meaning when you're talking about brightness. So if you shoot way too bright and then later in post-production you try to edit it, it's gonna be very difficult for you to edit. It's gonna be hard, it's gonna be grainy, it's gonna look nasty. So the rule of thumb is, you always wanna it's better to shoot underexposed and then go to post-production and bump up those things that you need to bump up to make it nice and bright. So those are pretty much the big three to help you understand, to get you started on the look that you're trying to achieve when it comes to videography. And even photography is super important, you understand that. Now for me, like I said, I like the cinematic look. So I always have it 1/50th. I like this blurry background, obviously depending what I'm doing, but if I'm shooting a video like this, I'm gonna have it at 1.4 f-stop, right? I'm gonna have that number as low as possible, have my aperture open as wide as possible, and then I'm always gonna keep my ISO at 100. I never mess with my ISO. Now, here's a tricky thing, all right? Let's say you're in your studio. Now you have everything set up. You're like, man, Steve, I set everything up and I went outside because I wanted to take a shot outside, and I felt like I needed another backdrop. And you go outside and everything is blown out. What do you do? Let's talk about this, come on. So like I said, you have everything set up, right? You have the three pillars. You have the 1/50th, you double your frame rate, you have your aperture where you want it, and you have your ISO at a 100, right? You're not so exposed. And you go outside and it's super, 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 super bright. And it's blown out. You're like, dang, what in the world? Why am I not, you know, everything that I read is supposed to be good to go. So something that you need to take into consideration is a variable ND filter, right? So you have all your settings the way you like it, but when you're outside and it's so bright, everything is so blown out. So what you need to do is get a variable ND filter. So let me show you. Right now, I'm outside with the settings that I have, and I have a variable ND filter on. So let me show you what it looks like without a variable ND filter. So I'm gonna go ahead and start unscrewing. All right, boom, right? I have all my settings properly. As you can see, it's just blown out. So with ND filter, without an ND filter. So it's something that I just wanted to maybe help you understand and give you a different perspective on maybe some of the things that you're trying to achieve, right? The cool thing about a variable ND filter, it has these little dots on the top, and you can change the f-stop, right? It's kind of like changing, it's a game of light, right? So in the variable ND filters, let's say you go in a room where it's too dark and you need to brighten up. All you have to do is turn the lens and brighten it up. Pretty easy. And if it's too bright and you want to darken it up like it is outside, you can turn it until you achieve, if you get the look that you want to achieve. So that's pretty much what that is. So let's go ahead and head back into the studio and we'll finish this off. All right, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. It was a really quick down and dirty of the pillars of videography or photography. You know, your ISO, your shutter speed, and your aperture. I truly recommend you guys do some research, go online and look those up, and try to get a better understanding of what those mean. You know, and how to achieve that look that you're going for. So I really want to know what you guys think. Make sure you leave a comment below and share some of your experiences with this. You know, I know, like I said, for me in the beginning, it was very difficult to try to understand these things. So all right, guys, thank you for joining me and have a good one. Catch you on the next one.